Tennessee made us look bad. Boy, but I was not all that sad to see it happen. So we thought that Missouri would give Tennessee a really big fight yesterday, and none of that ever materialized. Some games, when you pick them, maybe just straight up or against the spread, sometimes you watch it and, you're like -4 turnovers and there's just some sloppy play. But all in all, you watch and you say, you know what, I'd make the same pick today. If these teams played again, I'd make the same pick. Well, that was not the case yesterday. Tennessee thoroughly dismantled Missouri, and it was about 5 or 6 minutes into the game, I realized, oh boy, well, we're in for a long afternoon here. We love Missouri, plus 10.5, and I don't love it so much looking back on it. But just remember why, because I want to talk about how impressive this was. The reason why we loved Missouri so much, part of it was situational. Tennessee, still a team that's very much coalescing and gelling. They were coming off an emotional last-minute win at South Carolina. They got a huge one on deck against Georgia. Just figured, they'd be happy to get out of here with a win by any means necessary. I really thought it'd be one of those dogfight, got to scrap it out into the very end kind of games. I also thought that Missouri was plenty good enough at safety to where there weren't going to be very many explosive plays, so Tennessee was going to have to dink and dunk their way down the field. They were going to have to run the ball steadily, and it was going to be a bunch of 10 to 15 play drives. And so that normally doesn't make for a blowout game, is what I'm saying. Well, Tennessee absolutely did that, and it did make for a blowout game. They owned it. And they also showed plenty of room for improvement, which is what gives you confidence if you're a Tennessee fan. Defensive front consistency, I'm sure they want to see get better. They get Bryce Thompson back in a more full role this week. I think they played him on like third downs and dime personnel situations this past week, but that's one of, if not the best players they have in their secondary. And secondary gave up some explosive plays yesterday, so a lot of room for improvement. But I did want to mention, by the way, Kenneth George played a lot in Thompson's absence. I don't know if you guys know this. Tennessee fans probably do. Kenneth George, who is playing football for the University of Tennessee right now, like meaningful downs, he didn't play high school football. Kenneth George flat out didn't play high school football. Think about how insanely talented you have to be to play in the SEC if you did play peewee, middle school, and high school football. Kenneth George just said, football, college football, I guess I'll give it a try. And now he's playing, and playing at a pretty good level too. So he's not a charity case. So Jeremy Pruitt made a point to point that out after the game yesterday, so I wanted to point it out here. We got to stop moving the goalposts. Not literally, that would be cheating, but figuratively, a lot of people keep moving the goalposts on teams like Tennessee. I get so tired of it. So like Florida plays Ole Miss in week 1. Florida exceeds expectation in week 1. I praise Florida. All I got in return was, well, it was just Ole Miss. Like I didn't know who they played. So sure enough, it happens here. Tennessee plays Missouri. I thought they handled in a very mature manner a lot of situational dynamics that have taken down a lot of teams before and will afterwards, and they handled them pretty flawlessly, and I was impressed by it. They were so dominant along the lines of scrimmage. They were so efficient offensively. The running backs, both of those guys, Chandler and Gray, looked very good. That's what you need to see from them every week. They have asked that team to be the most physical offense in the SEC. They look every bit the part. So my point is they took care of business. They did what they were supposed to. I don't take it for granted when teams do what they're supposed to, because how many of them do we see every week not do what they're supposed to? But lo and behold, as sure as you pointed out, all you get is, well, it's Missouri. Yeah, I know who it was. But you're saying that in retrospect like you expected a blowout ahead of time. And I would ask you, if you did, screenshot your bet slip. Show me the paycheck that you bet on Tennessee since you were so sure of it. I don't think you did. It's just easy to say that after the fact. Here's what we can do. We can go back and tell LSU in week 1, oh, it was Mississippi State. They didn't say that because they got their tail kicked. Do you know yesterday, does Oklahoma know it was just Iowa State? Do they know that? I don't think they know that. For that matter, does Mississippi State know that it was just Arkansas? It's just Arkansas you played yesterday. Anyone saying that? No, because they didn't take care of business. Don't care how big a favorite they were. So Tennessee did. So I give credit where it's due. Remember, just to reiterate, as we enter Tennessee-Georgia week, remember what we said. The big ask for Tennessee was that coaching staff, I think, has asked them to do something that most teams aren't capable of. And that is, we do not have a bona fide All-American quarterback. We don't have this depth at receiver that the likes of Alabama do, but what we do have is we've got an incredible offensive line. They got 4 former 5-star players on that offensive line. You may look and think they have roster deficits elsewhere. This offensive line is premier. It is every bit what you would expect to exist at Alabama or Georgia, for that matter, since they're playing Georgia this week. Every bit. That offensive line is capable of putting on every bit the performance physically that Georgia did last night against Auburn. In fact, they did yesterday. It was just in a lesser profile game. Those teams play this week. And I want to leave you with this. Everyone is still in this mood to talk about how big a roster disadvantage Tennessee has. Just to give you a little comparative analysis, Georgia played Auburn yesterday. Georgia plays Tennessee this week. What you would think is Auburn decidedly better roster than Tennessee. That's what you think. I looked at the 24/7 Sports team talent composite, which is essentially just a rating of how much raw talent you have on your roster using former recruiting rankings. Auburn's number 13 in the country right now. Where do you think Tennessee is? 25th, 30th, 35th? Auburn's 13th, Tennessee is 14th. Those are pretty identical rosters at this point. Already pretty identical rosters. So at that point, you got to ask who's doing a better job of developing, who has a better game plan, who looks like they have their act together. That's rhetorical. I'll let you answer that.